Hi natives, in today's video English lesson, I'm going to show you a couple of icebreakers that you can use to start a conversation with any native speaker. You see, when you don't know your conversation partner, we need to break the ice and start the conversation in a friendly and easy way to get the other person to respond to us. Now, what you can see here is a roadmap of how to have a smooth conversation in English. It starts with the icebreaker. And after that, we want to ask polite but engaging follow-up questions to keep the conversation going. And then we also want to be using some speculation for things that come up during the conversation. This will prompt our conversation partner to say a little bit more and to elaborate on some of their answers. And then finally, when it's time, we want to do a 3-step exit strategy to end the conversation in a quick but comfortable way so that our conversation partner is left with good feelings about how that conversation ended and then it wasn't awkward. So today's video is part 1 of a 2-part series, and we're going to focus mostly on the icebreakers and how to ask inviting questions. But first, I want to show you how not to start a conversation. We'll do that right after the jump. Yeah, so we were talking and it just turned into an argument. And at that point, I just told him,
I heard you speak in English. Are you from England?
No, America.
See, you've got a map of Katowice. Are you on holidays?
No, just business.
How long are you here for?
Not long.
Okay. What kind of business are you into?
Commercial development.
What does it mean?
Hey, listen, I'm a little bit short on time, so if you don't mind.
Sorry. Have a nice day, Power.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Let's have a look at the dialogue and study it for the don'ts of conversation. Firstly, let's look at the responses from the victim. The first response, no, America, was just a short 2-word answer. The same for the second response. The third response was rather vague. If you don't know what vague means, it just means the speaker doesn't want to give too much information. This is a clear sign that he or she doesn't want to engage in this conversation. And finally, we have another short 2-word answer. Now, let's have a look at the questions and diagnose what's wrong with each one. The first question, are you from England, is too direct. It's sudden and surprises the victim with the question. The second conversation prompt is an attempted speculation by the stranger. I see you've got a map of Katowice. You're on holiday. Again, this is rather direct and sudden. How long are you here for? Also comes off as direct. And finally, what kind of business do you have? Comes off as direct as well. One thing these 4 prompts have in common that make them direct is they're all in the present simple. We can also add some indirect starter phrases to these questions to fix them and make them more friendly sounding and engaging. But what else is missing is the icebreaker to get things started. When you are total strangers, you should break the ice when starting the contact and get the other person to warm up to you. Remember, the less we know each other, the more indirect we should be. While the better we do know each other, the more direct we can be, depending on the situation, of course. Let's take an example I know all too well. People are always asking me, John, why did you come to Poland? Now, this question may seem innocent enough, but if I don't know this person, oftentimes I'll give an evasive response. Basically, I'll be vague or give a short answer, which probably isn't going to satisfy the question asker. So what's wrong with the question? The answer is why. Imagine yourself in a classroom and you're doing some exercises and your teacher comes over and looks down at your work and says, "Why did you do it this way?" You're immediately thinking, I must have done something wrong. Why functions as a challenge to the person who hears it. It puts them on the defensive, which isn't great for conversation. So how do you get around this? Ask inviting questions. An inviting question is one where we give an invitation for the person to speak, to give a good answer, to engage with us. 3 great inviting questions you can ask are, number 1, questions with how instead of why, and also what brings you and what made you. Let's analyze these questions further, shall we? What brings you to Poland, as an example, is much more inviting than why. It asks the person about the pull factor of Poland, or the attraction. But the focus is on Poland, not my why. On the other hand, we have what made you want to leave Los Angeles? This asks about the push factor, or why I wanted to leave where I'm from. What makes you and what brought you are great questions because they ask the other person their reasoning or thought process. Therefore, you want to formulate questions in this way with native speakers if you want to get to know them personally. Let's see some example sentences with both forms. What brought you to this university program? Or what brought you into this exchange program? What made you want to teach English? What made you want to quit your old job and come here? And now, what else do you need to know in order to strike up a conversation on the streets or chat someone up at a social event? Let's look at the big picture. There are 3 main keys to the conversation. Let's observe. The first key is to break the ice. Here we want to start the conversation in a friendly way. The next key is to keep the conversation going. We do this by asking polite, indirect follow-up questions. We also prompt the other person and signal them to speak or explain with language prompts that you'll learn in the next lesson. The third key is to bring the conversation to a close with some sort of exit strategy. In this part 1, we're only going to focus on icebreakers. In the next lesson, you're going to learn indirect questions and the exit strategy. Now, the best icebreakers to use start with some kind of observation. An observation is when you see, hear, or use one of your senses to find something of interest about the situation, and you comment on it to the other person. So, you can use what you see, or you can use what you hear. Now, 2 great icebreakers are I couldn't help noticing and I couldn't help overhearing. These 2 icebreakers come from the expression I can't help doing something. Can't help means that you can't stop yourself from doing something. So I can't help or I couldn't help noticing is for the situation where Something is obvious for you to see and you want to comment on it. For example, I couldn't help noticing your camera. You must be here on holiday. Or, I couldn't help noticing your t-shirt. Is that where you're from? Now it's your turn. You're walking past this lady on the street. You can clearly see she's got a map and needs help with directions. So what's your icebreaker? That's right. I couldn't help noticing your map. Did you need any help with directions? On the other hand, I couldn't help overhearing is for when you are so close to someone that you can't not hear what they're saying. An example might be, I couldn't help overhearing your accent. Can I ask where you're from? Now that you know some basic icebreakers, you should be able to start up a conversation with just about anyone. The next thing to learn is to build on the conversation. We've already learned how to ask inviting questions. In part 2, we're going to continue with following up with indirect questions, followed by using speculation to take your conversation skills to the next level. So, stay tuned for the next one.
Now, let's do a quick review of what you've just learned. If you remember the first conversation, the stranger really caught me by surprise, and as a result, I was rather defensive and evasive with my answers. If you want to avoid this kind of awkwardness when you start a conversation with an English speaker, it really begins with how you approach people. You want to approach an English speaker with a friendly and engaging icebreaker. Also, follow up with a nice inviting question like, how did you end up here? Or what brought you here? Or what made you want to come here? Now, next time you're out and about and you hear or see an English speaker or English speakers, why don't you try one of these icebreakers out? Something like this. Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing you speaking English. May I ask where you're from? And just see how that works out for you and if you're able to start a nice conversation with them from there. So before we finish, if you haven't done so already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot of great ideas for more content, and don't forget that part 2 is coming out real soon to follow this up with how to ask indirect questions and a nice easy way to end the conversation. So that's it for this one, and I'll see you next time.